Hi, I'm Susan with Growing Character. There are many classic characteristics that are associated with autism, and as a school psychologist, I've learned to identify them daily. But have you ever stopped to think about why kids with autism do what they do? The answer lies in the difference in how their brains are wired. If we can understand those differences, then I believe we can better help our children on the autism spectrum.
Let's dive right in.
One of the hallmark signs of autism is the avoidance of eye contact. So why do kids with autism tend to look away? The first reason is they don't find communicative meaning in others' eyes like the rest of us do. They aren't drawn to the eyes as a source of information. Actually, drawing meaning from facial cues is really hard for children on the autism spectrum. Historically, avoiding eye contact has been interpreted as a sign that kids don't care about what's happening in the social world around them. But research has shown that kids with autism often look away because it causes an overstimulation in a part of the brain which is simply unpleasant for them. If they are forced to sustain eye contact, it can be really stressful for them, and it can cause them so much anxiety that your kid actually ends up paying less attention when you talk. Why do kids with autism have difficulty responding when their name is called?
Liam. Liam. Liam.
Researchers at Stanford University have found that the pathways that connect speech recognition to the brain's reward center are just wired differently than in typically developing brains. Just like when I'm engaging in a pleasurable activity like listening to music or eating a piece of chocolate, the reward center of my brain is being activated. A similar reaction should take place when we hear speech. But with children with autism, this simply just doesn't happen the same way. It's not that these children have poor hearing or that they're choosing to ignore you. It's just that their brain isn't registering your voice calling them in the same way.
Is there an echo in here? Echo, echo, echo.
Children with autism often engage in echolalia, echoing or repeating the last word or phrase that they hear. But why? Because children with autism have difficulty coming up with language on their own, their brain has come up with a nice trick. It'll copy what it hears from the world around them in place of using their own original words or phrases. It shows us that these children know that they're supposed to give a response. And since they can't quite come up with it on their own, they'll repeat back what you said. With the help of a good speech therapist, children can learn to expand on their echolalia. Children with autism also sometimes do something called scripting, where they repeat lines that they've heard in a memorized way. But how can they repeat a whole line from a show when they're having trouble putting together two words to ask for milk? That's because the autistic brain tends to learn in chunks rather than creatively putting words together like we do when we speak. Also, as children develop more language, they may repeat phrases they know in order to start an interaction with someone, or they may learn to ask the same questions. This actually makes interaction more predictable for them. Therefore, more comfortable. So many parents tell me that their children can sing whole songs, but they can't even speak. How can that be? The left side of the brain is typically where the language center of the brain is housed, and the right side where music is. Brain studies have shown that many children on the autism spectrum are right brain dominant, which allows them to sing the words of a song because they're accessing a different part of the brain from when they're talking. Almost all children who have been diagnosed with autism have some type of what we psychologists call restricted and repetitive behaviors. Oftentimes our kiddos will flap their hands, or jump, or rock, or spin their bodies repetitively. This is often called stimming, short for self-stimulatory behaviors. But have you ever thought of why? These behaviors are caused by an unmet sensory need. Sometimes there's too much going on in the environment and it overwhelms the child. And sometimes their bodies are understimulated and they need arousal. Children with autism use these behaviors to regulate their bodies and to soothe themselves. Just like when we have to sit for a really long meeting, we start to tap our feet, doodle on paper, or take trips to the bathroom. These are all ways we use to regulate ourselves. The only difference between what we do and what children on the spectrum do is the type of stimming behavior, how often we need to do it, and how well we know how to conceal it. They use these behaviors to help manage challenging situations when they feel really frustrated or overwhelmed or anxious, or even when they're really excited. So unless your kiddo is hurting himself, or the stimming is distracting from focusing at school, or is keeping her from making friends, it's okay to let them do the thing that helps them feel good when they're stressed. And the last thing is that it's common for children who are on the spectrum to fixate on what they find enjoyable, and they have difficulty transitioning away from it. The brain affected by autism has a tendency to notice details and to fixate on them, as opposed to seeing the whole object. And the brain tends to be less flexible, meaning that when they're doing something, it's really hard for their brain to flex and allow for new tasks or information to come in. The front part of the brain is responsible for what we call executive functioning skills. That allows us to shift our attention when our name is called or when we need to move from one activity to another. This is simply more difficult to do with children with autism, and they need time and visual reminders to be able to do so. These brain differences aren't bad. They aren't wrong. They are just different. And that's what's called neurodiversity. It means that we're all wired differently, which makes it so that we all think and learn and process information differently from one another. I hope this video has helped you understand your kiddo's behavior just a little bit better. Don't forget to check out my other videos on autism and consider subscribing to Growing Character. See you next time!